Version today because we are live in Manchester, Vermont. We're on the road here talking to a lot of the businesses and organizations that really make this place unique. And we're joined by one of those people right now, Randy Schmidt of the Vermont Bird Place.
How are you doing?
18 years in business.
The store's been in town for 18 years. We owned it for the last 10.
Wow, and tell us about what you offer.
Well, basically, the primary stuff that we do is anything related to backyard birding. So that includes bird feeders, bird baths, nesting boxes, hummingbird feeders, everything that helps attract wild birds to your backyard.
Yeah.
Wow. So, how many different kinds of wild birds do we have up here in Vermont?
Well, in your backyard, you can basically get pretty quickly with a feeder about 26, 27 different species into your backyard. It doesn't take that long. It's really about having the right seed.
Okay.
And that's the other big part of what we do is that we have a lot of different seed choices that bring in a different variety of birds. On top of the fact that you have different feeders for different types of birds, so we have all those different combinations that help, bring the best.
So how do the birds find out that is it a gossip chain or
Actually, that's not far off.
Yeah.
Birds don't smell very well.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, most birds don't smell at all. So the way they find food is they see it. Eyesight is their best sense. So the whole idea about putting a feeder in your backyard is putting it in a place where they can find it. Once they find it, to the gossip point, they actually have a vocalization that they make. Two in particular, the black-capped chickadee and the American goldfinch, have a very specific "I found food" kind of vocalization,
Right. Yeah.
and other birds tune into that. So when they let everyone else know, they're kind of like advertising the fact that there's food here for birds to find. So
wow,
they actually do that.
That's really
pretty neat.
And obviously you get into this business because you must love birds.
It's all about the birds.
Is it? You just said something interesting off air. Tell us what you said.
When we bought the business 10 years ago, the previous owners had said one of the nice things about the business is that people who feed backyard birds are generally nice people. You can't be a curmudgeon and feed birds because opposed to a dog or a cat, you're not going to snuggle up with anything at night or anything like that. You can't train them to do anything. So you're really doing it just for your enjoyment. And for a lot of people, it's kind of like where they take a break.
Yeah.
At the beginning of the day, at the end of the day, they can kind of sit back and watch their feeders. It's a great activity for grandparents and kids to get into together. And once you get kids interested in birding, it's a great way to introduce them into nature in general.
Right.
Once they take an interest in knowing what a bird is, they start identifying things. They want to get out there. So it's really kind of exposing them to, the different things they can find out in nature.
Yeah.
Now, a few years ago, I got my father for Father's Day a nice bird feeder for his back deck. They live in the woods in Connecticut, and he loved it, but the squirrels kept coming and getting it. Now, my dad thought the squirrels were great and cute and everything too, but it really bugged my mom. What's your thoughts on that, and what's your advice for those who want to keep the squirrels away?
I would like to say I'm Switzerland on the topic, but basically,
Diplomatic.
But basically, there are ways to at least prevent having them get complete access to the seed.
Right.
So people are on a different part of a very large continuum about squirrels. It's a real love-hate relationship. Some people love having them around. They feed them. They hand feed them. Others people would rather never see a squirrel again. So what we do is we have a couple of great selection of feeders that actually prevent access.
Okay.
So what you really end up with is feeders that feed birds, and that's where it's primarily going. And then the seed that they kind of throw out on the ground and don't want to eat, squirrels end up on the ground picking that up. And that's kind of the best scenario.
Yeah.
When you put food out in your backyard, you're not feeding birds. You're feeding anyone that can find it.
Right.
So knowing that ahead of time, we probably recommend 7 times out of 10 squirrel-resistant or squirrel-proof feeders first, because if you're not prepared for it, there's nothing really more frustrating than seeing a squirrel eat everything.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
And they just eat everything.
And you want these beautiful and great-sounding birds to show
Right.
up, and then instead you got a bunch of gray squirrels all fighting over
Yeah, and
your
basically
ear.
you see squirrels looking at like, yeah, what are you going to do?
Exactly. They have such an attitude about
Exactly,
that.
they do. Especially when, and everyone has their squirrel chasing story, and
Right.
in robes or not robes. So yeah, yelling at squirrels generally doesn't do you any good.
They forget about it anyway.
Yeah,
They-
they
don't
really
care.
don't care. They don't care. They really don't care.
Randy, what are some of your favorite birds around here in Vermont?
Well, the ones at feeders that people like to see, obviously the northern cardinal. Everyone likes
Right.
to see it. It's just the color. It's the
Yeah.
red. But the one that always gets people who have never fed birds before kind of their attention is the rose-breasted grosbeak. It's a black and white bird with a big rose-breasted triangle
Okay.
on the front. Indigo buntings are another one. People tend to like chickadees just because they're a pretty gregarious bird. You can actually, with time, train them so they feed out of your hand.
Oh, really? Wow.
Goldfinch, obviously, for the color. I mean, anything colorful tends to get a lot of attention, but also the woodpeckers. People like, Harrys and Downies and red bellies. So, I mean, everyone has their favorite, but I would say more than ever, the thing that we get asked about most is either attracting northern cardinals or eastern bluebirds, which is a whole different thing.
Do you do bluebird houses?
We do bluebird boxes, and that's really the difference. With them, it's not about the food. It's really about putting up nesting boxes so that they can nest, and then you start feeding them and kind of bring them around, and also planting for them as well.
And they need more of an open area, right?
Big open meadows are what they like. Either bluebirds or tree swallows are the birds that kind of take boxes out there. But nesting boxes are good for all birds. There's not enough natural tree cavities for birds to nest in, because basically the thinking is gone is when a tree dies or it gets old, we take it down. What we want to see is people leaving up snags in their backyard so that woodpeckers start making holes. When they start making holes in the old dead trees, that's what birds use to nest.
Cool.
That notwithstanding, putting up nesting boxes is the next best thing.
I always thought the sound of the woodpecker is such a cool sound.
Well, it's funny, and there's two different kinds of sounds, especially early in spring. We'll get a lot of people coming in going, this woodpecker keeps hitting my mailbox, or they keep hitting my chimney. In the early spring, when they're looking for a mate, they'll drum on anything that makes a lot of noise.
Oh, yeah, I've had one drumming right by my head when I was sleeping
A lot of guys
morning.
are like that, right?
Again, it is nature imitating life, or life
Exactly,
imitating nature. I'm not quite certain, but the whole idea is that they're trying to find a mate, and that generally stops. The other part is, like, if you have a wood house, or I live in a log house, and sometimes you'll see woodpeckers really going at a hole or something. That has more to do with the fact that usually there's carpenter bees or something else in the wood that they're trying to get out. They can hear that. And there's ways to kind of prevent that, and we try and help people with that. But that has more to do with looking for a problem than, and figuring that out than what a woodpecker is going to do, which is what they're going to do is what they're going to do.
So I imagine a big part of your job is just listening to people's stories, right?
We are the place where they can kind of come and let it all out. I mean, there's nothing like, you'll see these big guys coming in and they're like just blather, they just love talking about their birds, because it's not something when you go to work on Monday and say, guess who came to my backyard bird feeder?
You can't,
You don't talk about like that.
You have to find somebody else who's interested in it.
Exactly. And the other part that we do is we do monthly bird walks at Hildene.
Okay.
So we try and take the backyard birding to the trail, which is a
great.
very different type of birding. These are the birds you have to look to find. So we sell a lot of optics, binoculars, spotting scopes, things like that. So being able to expose people to the backyard birds they have in kind of their natural environment is kind of the next step. And then you have the warblers, raptors and things like that you get to see that you don't see in your backyard. Wow. So that's kind of the second part of the birding business. That's a lot of fun.
So do you also sell or give advice for how people can pick out the calls of the birds?
Yeah. Well, a lot of that's gone to apps.
Oh, right. That's true. Yeah.
I mean, there used to be some great CDs and tapes and stuff like that would, direct people to how to learn songs. But really, now there's some great apps out there, and we use them on our bird walks.
Okay.
I mean, we let people know that there's a lot of technology that can help birding become a lot more accessible.
Right.
There's, again, for first-time birders, especially in the trail, you have all these people calling out birds that they're hearing, not seeing, and you're like, yeah, right. So the nice thing is that with these apps, you can show them a picture of what we're hearing. You can play the song, and they can hear it in there. So it kind of connects the technology to the hobby.
So fascinating. It's such
It's
a
a lot
neat
of fun.
way to, I think it's just like it's a good thing for the environment too, because you're providing this food for the birds, it's giving them a place to come and congregate, and
it's a
move
real
things along.
easy introduction to nature.
Wow.
It's a comfortable way to get people
That's
involved
so
with
great.
it.
That's great. Now, Randy, how can people get more information on the Vermont Bird Place?
Well, we have a website,
Great.
thevermontbirdplace.com. We have a really good presence on Facebook, the Vermont Bird Place. Vermont Bird Place, Facebook/Vermont Bird Place. We're on Twitter. We're on Instagram.
Right.
You can pretty much find us anywhere. A lot of people are beginning to post their pictures of birds
That's
that they
great.
find in their backyard,
Yeah.
talking
Fun,
about what's
right?
going
It's
on.
nice. Little
It
community,
is. It is really nice. And then right here in town, we're located at 48 Center Hill Road in Manchester.
Okay.
And in addition to all the birding stuff, we have garden accessories. We have fairy and mini garden stuff.
Oh,
We kind
love
of call
those.
that the things with wings
Yeah.
category.
You'd love that.
Love that.
So yeah, it's more than just the birding in the store as well.
That's so great.
That's great. Well, Randy, thanks so much. It's been a really fun interview.
Great.
Yeah,
Appreciate the
thanks
time.
a lot for coming down.
Sounds good.
All right. Well, we're live in Manchester, Vermont. We're just going to step out for a quick break, and we'll be back with more after this.